Hello, I'm Rachel Calloway. I'm a professor of voice here at USC, and I also direct Spark, Music Leadership at Carolina, and I'm so pleased to be joined by wonderful colleagues, student, and new friends, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Brittany Martin. I'm a graduate student in voice performance with an emphasis in community engagement and one of the Spark graduate assistants this year.
I'm Mike Brofman. I'm the artistic director of the Brooklyn Art Song Society and pianist.
And I'm Professor Dominic Armstrong, another voice instructor here at the university.
Great. So we have this time here with our special guest, Mike Brofman, who just worked yesterday in a culminating event, a recital of songs of war, focusing on music from World War I and World War II, which included faculty and students alike. And we wanted to just take this time to ask you, Mike, a little bit about Brooklyn Art Song Society. So can you just start us off by telling us what is Brooklyn Art Song Society and why you created it?
So Brooklyn Art Song Society is a monthly concert series in Brooklyn. We do our concerts in Brooklyn Heights now. And it's focused on the sort of vast repertoire of poetry set to music. This is now our lucky 13th season. So we started in 2010. The idea came for me when I first was out of college, was sort of by happenstance doing a lot of vocal accompaniment and discovered this repertoire and realized that there was, even in New York City, which is a artistic capital, not that much opportunity to sing specifically art song, and an organization dedicated to sort of continuing the tradition of art song, from the 19th century, purely without, the influence of opera or musical theater or Broadway or pop or other things, and that the opportunities that did exist were things like at Carnegie Hall, where they really just focused on the singer and sort of had a famous opera singer from the Met or from, by reputation come and just do a program that was sort of displaying them. There wasn't a lot of things sort of presenting the art form in and of itself. So that was the sort of niche that I was trying to fill at the time. And to make Brooklyn a more independent artistic capital, that sort of Brooklyn had this artistic identity as sort of the alternative to Manhattan, and has a lot of great stuff, but more focused on avant-garde, very contemporary things, and sort of out of mainstream. And there's not the same level of sort of, dare I say, traditional concert going in Brooklyn. And when I first got to Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Symphony Orchestra went defunct during the big crash in 2008, and just the thought that if Brooklyn was a city unto itself, which it wasn't until the 1890s, it would be the third biggest city in the United States, and it doesn't have its own symphony orchestra, which seems kind of silly, but that's just the way that its artistic identity. So to really try to change that artistic identity, that Brooklyn is a unique and serious place for high level classical music making.
Great, thanks so much.
When you established this organization, what were some challenges that you were expecting, and what were you surprised to find along the way in your 13 years, and how did that change over time too?
I think when I started, I was sort of blissfully ignorant, so every challenge was a complete surprise. So there was no challenges I was expecting, because I just kind of jumped into this having no idea what I was getting into. Really, the challenge is singular, and that's resources. And every other challenge kind of stems from that resources are hard to come by. You never have enough of them, and you're constantly having other things like building an audience and keeping the quality high. Those challenges are created basically because of of resources. So really, you know, from day one, it was about making sure that we financially have what we need to pay for what we're trying to do. And that will, I think that will forever be the challenge of starting something up, because, you know, what you're up against is the, you know, the arts organizations in any given place, and especially New York, have entrenched sort of financial resources. They have donors, they have government support, they have just a built-in audience that's buying tickets already. And a lot of that foundational government support goes back decades that they've already sort of baked into the cake. And a lot of the, and you have none of that. You have to start from zero and kind of, you know, build your own sort of ecosystem. So that's the challenge. And then, you know, there are other challenges as well, but that one, they all seem to be, every challenge I've ever had would have the perfect solution with X number more dollars.
Yeah.
I was curious to ask, because I do recall, I mean, I've been working with you for 10 years now with this organization, and I recall when the nonprofit status sort of came about and how big a deal it was for you. Can you talk about the years before that and what led to the final accomplishment of that and how that felt?
Yeah, you know, it was definitely a big, not-for-profit status is a game changer for an arts organization, because you can get donations and you can apply for most grants require you to be a not-for-profit. So before we were officially not-for-profit, we had what was called a fiscal sponsor, and that's usually if you want to start an arts organization, probably the first step is to get a fiscal sponsor. So a fiscal sponsor is basically a 501c themselves, a not-for-profit themselves, and they take you under their wing and sort of let you use their 501c3 status to do most of the things that a 501c3 status would do. So there's two kinds. Like any 501c3 can technically be a fiscal sponsor. It just has to be that they are in some way sort of related to your mission. So a lot of times, for example, if you do your concerts in a church, the church, which is its own, you know, has its own not-for-profit status, can become your fiscal sponsor. And basically what happens is people donate to the church and put in the little memo of the check that this is towards your organization, and then they give you the money. There are organizations that their whole being is that they are a fiscal sponsor. There's things like the Field and Fractured Atlas are the big ones. And basically they are a business that basically you just sign up with them, you pay dues, and they take a cut of your donations, and then they act as your fiscal sponsor. And they're not related to your mission in any way, except that their mission is to be a fiscal sponsor, so they're sort of allowed to do it. But there are serious limitations of that. One, people have to write a check to some organization they may have never heard of, like Fractured Atlas or this church, and then they just have to believe you that they're going to give you the money. And so that sometimes people are a little, there's just like a whole bunch of extra steps to get that money that, you know, and inevitably you will get checks written directly to you, and you have to go back to them, and so you have to do this and that, and it's just weird, and it kind of feels like money laundering. And that's issue number one. Issue number two is a lot of grants. Just some grants say you can have a fiscal sponsor, but it seriously limits. Like you will only get the minimum award through fiscal sponsorships, or they, you know, you're kind of put at the bottom of the list. Some just categorically won't. I've never seen a substantial grant where it's just like given with no judgment that you can have a fiscal sponsor and do it. And also just, you know, you have to pay. Very few fiscal sponsorships have no, you know, you just purely get the money. Any Fractured Atlas or the other ones, they take a cut. You know, they give you 92% of the money, so it can add up. So it's really only for when you're very, very small and you don't have the wherewithal to do it. or you're just like, it's just your first year and you don't have like a track record, then really you will hit the wall pretty quickly where it makes sense to become a non-profit. So that's what we did. It's actually, when we did it, it was long ago enough that it was a little more complicated, and we had lawyers do it for us pro bono, which, you know, most law firms have a pro bono wing that you can apply to. Also, if you just know lawyers, honestly, like, you know, even if they're not in this field, like, it's such, you know, it's complicated for an artist, but for like a lawyer, it's like, I don't know, it's like how you can go to like any salon for women can do men's haircuts, because it's just like so much simpler to just cut a man's hair that like they'll just know, like, it's just like not a challenge for them. It's kind of like any lawyer will just know how to do it. But now I think they introduced a like sort of very simple form now that you don't need lawyers for if you're under like I think $50,000 a year budget, which probably if you're a new arts organization, performing arts
Fledgling arts organization.
you're probably
will be comfortably under
Yeah.
$50,000.
So, but then, you know, so the things about this, one, you can just solicit donations directly. People can just write the check directly to you. You can apply for grants that you couldn't, that required it. You can, you know, corporate things where you can go to corporations and in-kind donations, which is when people, instead of giving you money, give you a thing. Like, you know, say somebody, you know, gives you the piano for your space, right? They can write
Right.
off the value of the
course.
piano. And I don't think they can even do that with a physical sponsorship, or it's like way too complex. So yeah, that's why, and I think, yeah, so really, if you're intending to exist long term, you need to have 501c3 status.
Mm-hmm.
As a performing arts organization. There's just no way around it.
Great, thanks.
I loved exploring your roster of artists that you have. It was extensive and so many great people who are part of your organization. Could you share with us a little about the structure and how those artists interact with each other, the society, and the concert series?
Yeah, well, you know, sort of, we're not like a orchestra or a string quartet where it's like all the members are kind of involved in every concert consistently, or like we're like an ensemble. I think the model is more like something like Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, like hence the word society, where there's a you know, a whole roster of people, but each individual is only performing on 1 or 2 concerts a year. And so yeah, and you know, we have, I think, you know, usually in a given season 45 to 50 people, because each concert has about 6 to 8 people. Usually people are not doing a full recital themselves, they're sort of splitting it up, which is I like the model, one, because at the price point that we can pay, I think, you know, doing a full recital would be, we'd be paying not that much. Doing 15 to 20 minutes or like one work, I think that it's more fair. And I think it's also just, as a performer, there's something about like just doing one work in a very intense process, I think gets a very cool result that you don't get to see in performance much of. Usually when you see someone that's performing their whole recital, it allows to do repertoire that we wouldn't normally do, because like, you know, people, you know, when you're doing a full recital, you're probably going to rely on, you know, either repertoire that you know really well already, or repertoire that you know you'll use a lot. But if you're just doing the one piece and you can focus on it, then it's a little easier to do something off the beaten path, I think. So yeah, and you know, there are pairings of pianists and singers that are for either just parts of longer term collaborations, or people who are sort of, you know, people are married to each other, and they tend to, you know, and people like me and Dominic who just work together for so long that it makes the process go very quickly. And then sometimes it's fun to sort of mix it up. Sometimes it's fun to sort of put 2 people together who've never performed together and see if there's like a different energy, see if they don't hate each other. Not everyone gets along, but yeah, and you know, and it's also you know, a way to create variety in the programming on a different level that sometimes I think You know, see, for example, you know, we do lots of things like an all Poulenc recital or an all, you know, Brahms recital or, you know, a single composer. And that would not work, you know, one pianist, one singer, one composer sounds like a slog. But when you have the variety of different performers and different performing styles, I think that could be very cool and just a way to, so then that also just opens up lots of different programming options that I think you wouldn't have otherwise.
Excellent. As students at USC think about, you know, next steps or taking a really intense collaboration from school or right after school and translating that into some, you know, professional activity, what piece of advice could you give folks who want to do something like you, or maybe they haven't fully formed what they want to do or where they want to go with it, but it takes quite a lot of grit and gumption to get something like that going. So for those who are just starting out with this type of opportunity, what advice would you give them?
I think one thing that I've sort of realized, two elements of it. One, I think you need to come from the attitude of service, not to yourself, but to music or to a community. I think you will get nowhere just trying to like build your career, because you are honestly the least interesting part of this whole equation. Like, you know, as fascinating as I think I am, I'm not as fascinating as Schubert or Brahms, and you know, the music itself, you know, is the thing, and we are just the sort of humble servants of it. And then also just that, you know, if you're going to go into a community and you're going to sort of ask them like for their hard-earned dollars for your organization, it needs to not just be so you can get your career going, or you know, so you can go and get some gigs or some performance experience and then hightail. Like why would anyone, you know, you need to make an argument that what you are providing has value to others, not just to yourself. And I think a lot of like, you know, career advice and a lot of like is like how to promote yourself, how to like get yourself out there, how to like connect with the right people. And it's sort of like in this, for a certain type of career that is useful, for this type of career it is completely useless, because the second it becomes about you, it doesn't work. And also it's honestly going to require personal sacrifice. It's going to require you to probably, you know, put your own money in or forego your own payment at some point, as I mentioned, because of the resource thing. And you have to be willing to do that. You have to be able to do that is one thing. So maybe if you have $40,000 of student loans, this is not the best way to go. But you need to, so you need to have a mindset that this is not about you and your career. It's sort of a, you know, the finger trap thing, where the harder you pull out, the tighter it gets, and then
That's right.
because the more you make it about yourself and your own success, the more frustrated you will get. The more you lean into making it about serving the music and serving the community you're in, I think the more success you will find personally for yourself.
Excellent. What a beautiful note to end on. So I hope we'll all lean into the music, serving the music, serving the arts, and serving our community, and certainly we'll continue to find success and joy with that. So thank you so much to our guest, Mike Brofman. Everyone check out Brooklyn Art Song Society. Students at USC, digital subscription. You can enjoy concerts every month. Thank you to Brittany Martin, wonderful singer in Spark GA, and Dominic Armstrong for connecting us with Mike, and we really appreciate your time, your music, and your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.